Hey guys, welcome to the very first Check Your Minimap podcast. I'm your host, Threshold Breaker, but you guys can call me THB. And I'm joined by Ansem, Oda, and Blackout. Say hello, guys.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Yo.
Today we'll be talking about map and level design in the Battlefield series. So why don't we kick this off with the design? Let's pick a map and talk about the overall design, and let's troubleshoot it a little bit here.
I would say a good one to start off with would be just go from with the one from the beta, Siege of Shanghai.
I'd have to agree. That's a good place to start, considering everybody that's played BF4 beta played that, and obviously the game released. So I'd say that's a good starting point.
Okay, so let's talk about, for you guys, what works and what doesn't, and what overall you're feeling could be improved on Siege of Shanghai. When we start off with, let's start off with Oda.
For the most part, I'm a pretty big fan of the map, even though, of course, I'm sure same for you guys. You played it a lot because it was the only map in the beta. But when it comes to maps, this is my opinion. I believe maps should try to cater to the vehicle players and the infantry players. And I think Siege does that pretty well because the vehicles have all this room to do their thing and drive around, and you have helis on the map so they can fly around. But all the infantry players can bound from point to point without getting constantly bombarded by the vehicles. In terms of improvements for the map, I think maybe changing how the top of the tower would work, just because people don't really seem to care if it's up or down. I think if you made the top of it a little more interesting, then you would see the tower up a lot more in games and, being destroyed before the game's even halfway over with. But other than that, I believe it's a pretty solid map. And if I had to change one more thing, I think maybe I wouldn't make it as symmetrical, because it can kind of make it a little boring, because the map's pretty much the same. It's in a horseshoe shape, and it's not all that interesting, even though I do think overall it flows pretty well.
So you're saying like the A and E flag doesn't get used very much because it's all B, C, and D?
Oh no, I think they get used, but if you're on one half of the map, it's kind of the same on the other half. Like the buildings are a little different, but when it comes to maps, I'm a fan of mostly asymmetrical over symmetrical.
I think that when you have something like that where it's kind of got that horseshoe or M-shaped kind of design, I think what really kind of throws it all off is that when you're looking at it from the center, kind of get that feeling that you don't necessarily have too many flanking routes in that map. Kind of get that feeling that you can go from A to E, so to speak, to kind of go on the back route, but you really don't. The only thing you have to get from that point to the other point is the jet skis. And unless you've got a lot of people that are going from one place to another, then you can easily get trapped at your gimmies, so to speak. That would be, A and B for people who might not necessarily know the map that well. The other problem is, although you can take that tower down at the C flag, there's other towers that are right by A, and there's also other towers that are right by D and E that people can rooftop camp on. And if you've got somebody that's sitting there with a SRA, they can literally just take down all of your air that entire game, and it could be a nuisance, and it could be extremely off-putting. So I feel what they really should have improved on was, and what they really should have learned from the beta overall, which might not have been able to be done considering not a lot of people played it the way that it's played now, was kind of think a little bit more tactically about where you're able to put places for people to sit on a rooftop. Maybe make it so that you have multiple ways of getting to a specific rooftop, because I know there's that flag that's at B that you can take that little L hallway that you can take to the top of that tower, and then there's another one where you can take the elevator all the way to the top. You have somebody where that's really decent with the SRA, and you completely own all of their air. And the only thing that they can do is sit there with, their tanks and their land vehicles. And if you've got a number of people kind of just sitting there, get into a situation where it's not very fun. Now, granted, if you've gotten to that point, you can make the argument, well, maybe you shouldn't have let it get to that point. But overall, I feel the map really does need a second look. And I do believe that they're kind of addressing it in the CTE. And I do know that they're kind of reducing the amount of rooftop camping spots. But we're going based on what we see on the retail version of Battlefield 4. And that hasn't taken place yet. So I still feel the map, it's great, but there's a lot of work still that needs to be done on there.
Yeah, I agree. I think really what you're possibly getting at is people who go into the map and exploit certain areas or aspects of the map versus the actual level design intent by the designer. I've seen all too many videos where somebody's sitting on C point, whether they're on the tippy top of the roof and they're shooting into the main base and they're taking out all the air. Basically, it prevents anybody from wanting to use a helicopter whatsoever. One of the things I would personally like to see, though, when you're talking about points A to E to try to force the enemy to come towards you, I'd like to either see a catwalk to a certain extent where you can take the quad bike or something like that to go across or like basically like a pedestrian bridge to go across, or some kind of subway type area where you can go under the water.
The only problem you kind of end up with that is if you've got people down there, you're going to have like basically a long hallway, metro type of situation where people are just going to camp a hallway. And you also have to remember, the underwater thing is probably a greater idea than a bridge, because you have to remember as soon as that Sea Point tower goes down, you do get the attack boat that spawn there. So you kind of limit the usefulness of that if you've got like a catwalk bridge that the boat might not be able to get under. It's really hard to kind of look at that because, as Oda kicked it off when he said that it's a horseshoe design, you have it where instead of it looking like a horseshoe, it looks like a giant, an uppercase A, so to speak, where you have kind of that little point that goes right across. I'm not sure exactly how they can kind of put it in there and kind of reflow it. It works to a certain extent now. It's just a little weird because you have just a pretty much linear design. It's just like a big arc, and that's really what it is.
I mean, I guess you could extend, certain, sidewalk aspects or like doing little bridges or something like that to Sea Point, but then it kind of turns into, I don't know, it would change the dynamic of gameplay, that's for sure, and also to the point where, just to touch on that again with, shooting straws into the enemy base from Sea Point. I don't know if they could do it, but wouldn't it be easier just elevating a building? Essentially, Sea Point is the tallest building, correct? In Siege of Shanghai.
I want to say the top of Sea Point, yes. You can pretty much see everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can look directly into everybody's spawn, and you can straw, RPG, etc. their aircraft before they're even off the platform.
Oh wait! There's only one thing that's incorrect about that. You cannot shoot into the. I want to say it's the Chinese spawn from Sea Point. The only time you can do that is
buildings.
Yeah, the apartment buildings are covering it, but it's not true the other side. So if you've got the U.S. side that's spawning, you can shoot their helicopters down before they even have a chance to take off, because the helicopters there are on top of the building, but they're not necessarily covered by much. But the other side, the Chinese side, the helicopters are right behind that apartment building. There's ample cover there that you can take off. You also have to remember that they're doing that retooling of all of the physics, so technically you could probably take off a little bit faster and outrun a SRA that hasn't curved yet, or that is curving, I should say. Because obviously that a curving SRA travels a little bit slower because it needs to arc, whereas straight shot like from C all the way to the US spawn point would be an easy shot. But yeah,
I think also with the straw nerf that might not be possible anymore.
that definitely is a good thing there. So
Yeah, I like the nerf. I will vote again for the nerf.
oh, you scrub! You must have been shot by a lot of SRAs.
That's not being a scrub.
Yeah, you guys are scrubs. You guys don't like the SRA. I'm just joking.
But back to the talk about giving us some sort of route across the water. I mean, I know that's kind of what the jet skis are for, but they're not really used. But I mean, if you think about the Levolution in Siege, I mean, what really happens? The building falls, C as a point changes, and it gets kind of boring, and the whole map gets hazy.
Yeah.
But all that debris is pretty much gone when it falls into the water. I mean, they could almost have it to where some of the debris is sticking out of the water.
Right.
Give it enough of like a space where the boat can drive out of it. But if it was close enough to where infantry players could bound across, that I guess I don't know what you want to call it, the bay. I mean, they could go from one side to the other, given they'd be exposed. But it would change the map up a little bit, and the Levolution would actually have somewhat of an impact on how the map's being played. And honestly, the Levolution on that map is really more like a gimmick.
It is, and to your point, and I agree with this, is the building should come down to benefit the level versus like what you're saying is basically a gimmick. It's like, oh, it destroys, and Sea Point trying to traverse over that rubble is a nightmare.
Yeah, you get stuck a lot.
Yeah, but why not? What they really should be looking at, as opposed to putting a jet ski there, why not put a rib? Just one rib, so you can get 4 people across that water there, so you can get some back caps, some quick back cap. I mean, granted, you can still have people kind of on that shoreline there looking to shoot javelins and stuff down or whatever. But at the very least, you have at least one gunner on there that can accurately shoot with the minigun there and provide a little bit of a defense, as opposed to just a 2-seater jet ski to skim across the water really quickly. You put a rib in there, and now all of a sudden it kind of disrupts the flow. The only problem is if you now have the rib, you've got a minigun on there. How does that bode well for the other side as well? I mean, you can't have it necessarily just one way. You have to think about the other side as well. So, I mean, that's something definitely I would say that they should kind of consider. But as it stands, I'd say that there definitely needs to be a little bit more looked at in terms of the rooftop camping from C down to the US side spawn.
Some sort of maybe taller building or something like that should probably be put in place so that you can't see from C all the way into the spawn. It makes it slightly one-sided. If just one of the skyscrapers was just a little taller, it would block it. If they moved maybe the helicopter down off the top of I believe it's an apartment
That
building
was just about what I was saying. Yeah.
As far as the rib, I do agree. The rib, it would actually also make the attack boat that spawns when you demolish C viable, because right now, how often do you get in that attack boat? How often do you use that for anything?
There's really not a whole lot you can do with that attack boat. I mean, unless you have vehicles and infantry right on the sides of the bay, it's there's not a whole lot you can really do with it.
You're
I mean-
basically at the mercy of people who are rooftop camping. I mean, and essentially, I don't want to call it rooftop camping, but like they're given the opportunity to do that, so it's kind of hard to like say, shake your finger at them like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be PTFO. But in that level, it's the verticality is so apparent for that level design. It's kind of hard to get mad at those individuals.
I would say that the boat there, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Nexus, such a quick point. You guys are absolutely right. The boat, I don't really see it there unless somebody's good with TVs and somebody's got TVs in general. Other than that, usually it's kind of there just to, pester armor going across the bridge, and that's really it. Or to grab armor that's coming out of the Chinese spawn and TV down that first street there and just, kind of just peck away at TVs. That's really it.
Yeah, I have seen the boat used effectively. Obviously, right after it was used effectively, it got strawed to death from rooftops because the attack boat cannot look high enough with the TVs, I believe it was, to actually start lobbing missiles up there. I think you can with the guns for the most part, but trying to fire directly above yourself at somebody on top of a building is quite difficult in a boat that moves. I mean, it does effectively force all armor to the backsides of the map. They can't be in the Bay Area if that attack boat is working effectively. But once again, as soon as it's starting to work effectively, everybody gets on top of a roof and RPGs it.
I'm gonna wrap this topic up, but I want to at least touch on one more map that everybody hates, and one more map that pretty much everybody is unanimously in love with. But if you guys don't mind, I'll
Metro.
pick.
Please don't say Metro. Please don't say.
No. I'm gonna pick. We're gonna leave. We're gonna table Metro for another time. Because
That's
everybody
practically a podcast.
thinks that's the way I'm going. There is another one. There is a very evil other map. But I'm gonna go.
Locker. Please don't say Locker.
No. It's one I like. And it's got to be Zavad.
Oh, I absolutely love this map.
Yeah, I mean the amount of cover you get for infantry. There's enough room for vehicles to do their thing. Essentially it works on like a 3-path system, if you will. You have your direct middle path, which brings you into points D, Delta, and Bravo. E is on the backside, and then F is the gimme to the enemy player if you are so chose to be on the other side.
I mean Delta and Charlie.
Delta and
Those are the two buildings there.
Oh, is it Charlie? All right, my bad. I thought it was
Yeah,
Bravo.
F is
I thought it was
slightly
Bravo
off to
for
the
some
west
reason.
for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zavad is definitely probably my favorite map if I had to choose one. And like what you guys were saying, I mean, there's concealment all over the place with all those trees, and even like all the flags. It's not just a big open space with a flag in the middle, maybe one building. If you're at B, you have to clear out all those buildings to make sure it's clear. Same with A, C and D, F, E. It's great, and I mean, like the vehicles can do their thing, the infantry can do their thing. The only problem I have with the Zavad is the stupid AA gun.
Oh my god, don't even get me started on that. That was going to be my complaint. My number one complaint about that map is you don't need the AA, or if you're going to have AAs, please, obviously, I guess they're looking at the AA a second time or whatnot, but I really feel that map does not need AA because a skilled helicopter pilot will be able to dodge the RPGs and whatnot. But if somebody does get off stinger hits and whatnot, then that means that they got a good shot lined up, so to speak. And as much as people will probably disagree with me, the helicopter, they can just duck behind trees and kind of just dodge behind the buildings and stuff like that. And then as much as people don't use it, there's also cover on the left side. There's like that kind of little hill area that kind of tapers off by the A flag, and there's that little hill area that goes all the way to the other side spawn. There's that bridge there. You can use all of that for cover. You can even use the train cars out by E for cover. There's not enough people that do that, but if you've got somebody that's, get a nice clean shot for a stinger, then you have to kind of say, okay, I took a risk by going out into the open in a helicopter, and they got a stinger shot off. I could have ducked, in between trees. There's like you guys said, there's a lot of buildings, a lot of trees, a lot of cover and whatnot. That map has always been my personal favorite since the game came out. I absolutely head over here love that map. It's not only conquest, it's also obliteration. It's also a rush. I love the first set of MCOMs, because you have that feeling where you really have to push in, and especially with the new changes to the way the rush bombs are. You have that bomb where it's set on the outside as opposed to the inside where it used to be. Remember when that first bomb used to be on, or I'm sorry, it used to be on the outside, but it used to be by the tank, like blown up tank on the left side. Now they moved that to the inside of where the entrance of that little bunker is, and it's a much better feeling map. So that map is absolutely glorious on no matter what game mode. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
That map is, yeah, the first instance on Rush where you go into that bunker / garage. I mean, the firefights that you can do, or like the back rages you can get, or that, like, you can drop down from the top, so you're not. It's such, like, even that, like, to what Odo is saying, like that area, it's A flag, also in Conquest. It's so well designed because you have all these levels of entry, and, like, to talk to another great node, like another flag node, is B flag, where you go in there and, like, there could be a lab in there, and you have enough cover, you have enough area of movement to go around and go through buildings and go onto the second floor and shoot the rocket launcher if you're engineer, or if you have to run, you have, like, concrete walls of cover as well as the buildings. So it's just like there's such a good level of detail in terms of level design that I see when I play Zavad, and I'm like, oh my god, this is one of my favorite maps.
Yeah, I think my favorite, and I'm pretty sure it's your guys' favorite too, the fight to maintain, what is it, Charlie and Delta? The two buildings next to each other? That fight, the fact that there's an underground path, the fact that there is a actual ground path and a roof path, just allows so that if you're not maintaining both of those buildings and they creep in and they get one of those flags, you have to be on it, because they can come over and just immediately start taking your flag unless you're fighting. And the fights, they're so intense, especially with helicopter fire coming down. And I think that if they do remove the AA, or they at least make it so that the AA is not just truly the bane of existence of helicopters, I don't think that the rooftop campers we have up there, which of course is perfectly fine, it's just a sniper sitting up there, if they actually had to deal with a helicopter presence, they would not be up there as much.
The other thing about that part, and to touch on exactly what you're talking about, you can't cap any flags from up there. So even if they are up there, they're not necessarily doing anything. Whereas conversely, Siege of Shanghai, the entire flag is on C. So people can spawn there. When you own C and D, you can spawn on them, but you're spawning outside of those flags. You're not spawning right on the flag. And I think it's Siege of Shanghai, you don't necessarily spawn on the flag, but you spawn near it, like right across the street. You can take the elevator up. All you really have to do is cross the street, and you're pretty much back up to that flag. Like, when was the last time you guys had a firefight in the lobby of that building? Never. Honestly,
I don't think I ever have.
If you were
Absolutely
unlucky
never.
to find somebody there, that's pretty much it.
Exactly. And the reason is because that's a useless area. The flag isn't there. But if you put that flag at the bottom, like they have in the CTE night map of Siege of Shanghai, you have a situation where people are fighting on the ground, and your benefit of getting that flag is to the top of the roof. So you have that situation where people are spawning on that flag, but they're spawning nearby, and they go up to the top of the flag. If you already own that flag, you already own that flag. It should be, if you cap that flag, your reward is a better position, not the other way around where you're fighting to get that position in the first place, because there's no give or take there. If some other flag already owns that, good luck getting back up there. The only thing you can do is take the building down. You know what I mean? But if you put it in the lobby, now your firefights are different, because you're fighting in the lobby with about a bunch of different entry points. You got that back entry point by the street. You have the multiple entry points right in the bay area up the stairs. You have the jet skis that can kind of fly in from the water. You can have those side paths right underneath the bridges that are kind of coming in. You have all of those things, and you kind of look at it as, imagine like a big lake with a bunch of little rivers coming in, and that's what you get. Whereas now it's just like, okay, you cap this point and you own this flag, so now you get to rooftop camp. Whereas if you have the flag set on the bottom, you're going to have to fight to get a better position. And when you do, then obviously you can own it, but at least when you have that position, or when you're fighting for that position, you have multiple ways to get into that flag. Whereas if you have the flag at the top of the map, you have 2 elevators, one on one side, or 4 elevators, I should say, right? Because you got one that goes all the way to the top of the building. Then you have the 2 that show up on that level flag, and that's it. So you have 3 different ways people can get to the top of that, unless you have a decent helicopter pilot that can clear all of that off. But again, that goes right back to the point. You have a rooftop camp with a SRA, and he's just going to take that helicopter right out of the sky.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, it should be that flag really should be at the base, and they know that because that's why they put that C flag right at the bottom. That's my feeling on that. But back to Zavad, I love it.
I was hoping to throw one last thing in there really quick.
Go ahead.
If the flag was in the bottom, I think they should also have it so that the boat is tied to the flag. So as soon as you cap the flag the first time you get the boat, because if you have ribs coming in there, owning that flag and having that boat would then reward you to deal with the ribs. But that's just my little 2 cents.
Yeah.
As far as Zavad goes, I feel like the only thing that I can say sort of negative, not like horribly negative, but just negative, I feel like Foxtrot is not a very used point. Alpha gets the back rages every so often, and Bravo's obviously the next one you go after, but I feel like Foxtrot kind of gets forgotten about.
Well, that's the other side's gimme.
It's also from a level design perspective. It's an uphill. It's a raised point. It's something like, in essence, it's more exposed. If you were to go up there, like, someone's going to notice you more doing that versus, like, and a lot of people are concentrated on the battle at C&D. I mean, I was gonna bring that point up when you guys were talking about it, was essentially like, because you have constant combat at C&D, because 1, it's the middle of the map, and 2, I think people just enjoy that back and forth. Those points, with the exception of, like, your loner who runs and goes caps A and then caps B, and then your team has to shift back and go recap those points. Yeah, you won't get a lot of activity at those outer extremities. What they've done is they've designed the map so that there are 2 points that literally sit on top of each other, so that is where everything is going to go down.
The other good thing about the way that map is designed is because, those 2 points are sitting on top of each other, you're going to have those people that are lone rangers, and that one particular squad that thinks tactically and says, everybody's at C and D. Why don't we just go and cap A and B? Or let's flank on that right side from, I want to say that's the Chinese side, on the right side all the way down from where that bridge is all the way down to A. That side path that, you barely see anybody, but you can really sneak by there if you've got, a quad or one of the F3000 trucks that I like to call them. You got a squad of 4 or 5 people, you can back cap those flags, and if people aren't paying attention to it, eventually that's going to come back and haunt them for the rest of the game, because now you're going to have an additional spawn point. You can start back raging everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, because you have those nice open lanes, and ultimately the cover that you have allows for you to do those things.
Well, I think if you look at those far, the extreme lanes, the ones all the way on the right or all the way on the left, if you look at them, they have cover all the way out there, but there's a little gap in between them and the forest and them and the hills, which basically allows that if you're flanking, you can't get caught off guard. It actually basically protects you slightly, encouraging you to flank.
Wish more maps kind of, did that. It just encourages you to move around a little bit more, because there's not enough players that take advantage of them. I mean, even on linear maps like Lockers and Metro, there's certainly a number of ways you can kind of flank and get good pushes going, but so many people focus on, the big firefights that they don't necessarily take advantage of those new routes.
I would like to actually pose a question to all of you. What do you think makes a bad battlefield map? Of course you have maps, like Locker and Metro, and they fit a specific role. They're meat grinder maps. They're there to, get kills for weapons and get some experience. Then you have maps which are just straight 100% vehicle usage. But when it comes to the average map, what do you think makes it horrible? I've stunned you all.
Well,
mind blown.
I don't think. No, go ahead, Ansem.
Well, when you say bad map, the first thing I think of is Road Transmission and Firestorm. These are just bad design, but they're bad design because they're vehicle oriented. Caspian Border, Rogue Transmission, all of these guys, these are for big armor pushes. This is your epic vehicle firefight maps. I'm not sure that I can think of a map that really has that bad layout, except for maybe, and this one actually might still be a vehicle-based map, but Sunken Dragon from the Dragon's Teeth DLC. That one's just not built for anybody.
I've actually got a great one, and like I already said earlier, I think maps for the most part, the best maps cater to the vehicle players and the infantry players. Now, Altai Range, in my opinion, is the worst map in Battlefield 4, and I don't know a single person that likes it.
Does anybody even play it anymore?
I don't know.
I was a fan of Altai Range Rush for a time, but that eventually got to me.
I mean, it's just a big, giant bowl with a hill in the middle. I mean, the only thing Altai Range really has going for it is, I believe it's D-Flag, where the bomber is, and that's kind of interesting, but everything else is so open. And I know I don't really want to get into the whole vehicle layout thing, but I mean, there are 5 AAs on the map, and there's no reason for that. Considering there's I mean, if there were 2 attack jets per team, I could see that, but they're stealth jets. But anyway, I mean, they're not going to change the map. If they were to remake it, but keep the same overall shape, I think adding, I don't know, like little sets of villages or just buildings from point to point, because it's just so empty. And I know it's like, okay, well, you should be, taking vehicles from point to point as a team. But the thing about Battlefield in general is a lot of stuff sounds really great on paper, but is not good in practice. And I think that's one thing that DICE, or even any game company, when you put something on paper, think, how is this actually going to play out? Because, I mean, this is kind of off topic, but look at Commander Mode. In theory, Commander Mode should be excellent. The Commander's saying, hey, like ordering all these squads to do this, but everyone knows that's not how it works out. Like, it's hard to even find a team that'll listen to a commander.
I think rather than saying what map is terrible, I'd say more what game modes on specific maps don't work. Like, there are just specific game modes in a map. Like, for example, I have an awesome time with Rush on Altai Range, and that's because there is no AA on that game on Rush. So the only problem is that now if you don't have a good push, like it's almost like the map needs to be played a certain way in order to be successful. And I really feel that it shouldn't be like that. I feel that the map design and the way objectives are laid out should cater to any type of player in general. It feels like if you don't have good pushes in the tank on that first set of MCOMs on Altai Range Rush, then you're not getting anywhere else. And the tank is really the key role there. And most people just tend to, spam shots right around the corner, and that's it, and, peek and, back up and pillar that corner. And that's really not how it's supposed to be played. What you should be doing, and what I've found success is actually lobbing shots kind of over the arc of the hill, as opposed to, just peeking and pillaring that right side hill. I'm not sure if you guys played Altai Range Rush lately, but I've gotten the most success that way. And strategic use of spawn beacon. Like, I've had spawn beacons placed in perfect spots where you parachute in, and as long as nobody kills you from the air, you can land right at the MCOM. And what that does is that brings everybody's attention away from the push that you as attackers are trying to make. It brings all of the attention away from that, and everybody kind of just looks at the MCOM. And that allows your team to kind of push.
Just to interject real quick, don't you, I feel like most rush modes just don't work well with these new Battlefield 4 maps. Sorry, a lot of the Battlefield 4 maps.
Yeah, when they originally came out with Rush, I remember seeing the post on Battlelog. They said that Rush was designed to be played, 32 players, so 16v16, and not 64. Or 32v32.
That's probably why, because I would be playing most of the time on 64, so that's more than likely the reason why they don't. Like, there's not that good give and take.
No, and this is back on DICE. Like, how do you say Rush is based around 32 players? No, Rush should be based around 64, because that's your cream of the crop. You know what I mean? I feel Rush and Conquest define Battlefield. And Rush is that huge adrenaline push. You want to set that last MCOM set with 4 tickets left, and you fight for that. You don't get that feeling anymore. You got a little measly squad, if you want to play it by DICE's standards, I should say. You get that little measly squad of 16v16, and it's like, that doesn't work. That doesn't allow for epic moments in the game. You want 32v32, the way Battlefield is meant to be played.
Thing about Rush, though, I don't know, how many of you guys played Bad Company 2?
Played it very little. Thing practically to death.
Well, for me, I'm pretty much only played Rush on Bad Company 2, and the maps that Rush was on, which was a lot of them, the way those maps were laid out for Rush, were perfect. I mean, it felt like you were taking ground when you were taking MCOMs because you weren't really going in like a straight line on a map. I mean, you were constantly like you take one set of MCOMs and you may be following a road that would take a sharp right or left, and then the next MCOM would be like up a hill. I can't remember the name of this one map, but the attacker started on top of a hill, pushed down through a jungle, and took over like a fishing village. Once they took that,
That
you
would
went
be
up another
Valparaiso.
hill. Was it? Well, you went up another hill and took a lighthouse that had a base around it,
Oh,
and then you went down into another fishing village, and then you went up another hill into like the left or something, and then took a final base. And it just like
that
it felt like you were
that was
taking ground.
yeah, that was a
And
great map. Yeah.
one of the, back to Altai Range Rush, though, was one thing I actually realized yesterday and thought it was kind of silly. Is you know how when the attackers first start out, you kind of take a curve to the right around that hill, and you go for those first set of MCOMs, and then the second set is immediately to the left and down the hill. I mean, if this
Yes.
was like an actual someone trying to take an objective, it's like you could just pass the first set of MCOMs and just go down the hill and take the second set.
Oh, I know
It's
what
like
you mean.
the
Yeah.
first set is not even impeding the second set. It's just kind of silly with that layout. Another thing with Rush in BF4 is there are a lot of maps where you have to cross a massive open area like a body of water or just an open field to arm MCOMs. And I know this is a subject for another debate, but because of the UCAV, that kills those maps. Or
And
even
mortar.
like UCAV mortar, or even like especially the water maps, the javelin. I
Well,
mean, the attackers should not have to cross a big open body of water or land to arm an MCOM.
no, because this isn't like
Operation
I-
Mortar, we're talking about you mother. I hate
no,
that
but it's not
map
like
on
storming
Rush.
the beach
Oh
at,
my
at
god, I
Normandy,
quit.
man. I mean, Oda, you can touch on this subject because with your background, like from a strategic standpoint, nobody would do that. You would essentially flank because nobody's going to take an open field, and we're talking about Operation UCAV essentially, or Metro, where the first area is you get what 2 jet skis, like or something like that to start out if you're the attackers. And
too.
God forbid if you lose those things. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just,
Yeah.
I just don't feel like. I mean, even if the UCAV was gone, I still don't like the idea of having to cross a big open area. I mean, you should give the infantry players the ability to bound from cover to cover, and that's a problem I think that's just in maps in general in Battlefield 4 is there's too much what I like to call standoff, which is distance between cover to cover. I mean, I understand you can't have buildings like covering an entire map, but you have to give the infantry players some way to move between point to point if they're not in a vehicle.
yeah, that is lost because it's my personal opinion. I do feel that Battlefield is very, at least Battlefield 4 is very vehicle centric.
I mean, there is a reason that because it's supposed to be like a all out war, quote unquote. But at the same time, it's do you guys? I mean, do you guys remember the Armored Kill DLC in
Yep.
BF3, right?
Yep.
Like I forget which map it was. I don't want to say Bandar Desert because one thing Bandar Desert did right is half that map was just a massive city, and that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
But,
That was a fun level.
What was it? Armored Shield, I think was the map. It was like this massive green field with like a giant hay bales everywhere.
Yep, that was
One thing I liked, I did like about that map, I thought it was a little too open. There could have been maybe
that was
more
a
trees,
big level.
but some of the flags had these cool like village style buildings on them. And I think maybe if they made them like skirt the road a little bit, or maybe expanded the size of the villages, it would make the map a little more interesting, and you wouldn't have to worry about running across the map if you didn't have a vehicle. Because like I said earlier, in theory, all players should be transporting back and forth between points in the vehicles, but that just doesn't really always happen.
Yeah, but to your point, I mean, in Armored Shield, there were areas like little nodes where you could find hiding spaces, and like if you were, basically SOL, not having a vehicle,
Yeah, but the
like
gunship would just rain down on you.
yeah, yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but yeah,
It's okay.
I
I'd rather
mean-
have pie.
yeah,
So the reason that we all mentioned Bad Company 2 and why that one worked absolutely perfectly and why Battlefield 3 was all right, but Battlefield 4 really doesn't seem to is Battlefield 4 maps were not built originally with rush maps. They were not built with the rush idea. Bad Company 2, all of those maps were built for rush first and conquest second. So is it that Battlefield franchise decided to go back to their roots, because originally we did not have rush mode, we only had conquest? They're basically wishing to go backwards kind of hurt them because they should have continued with the rush because that's what we want? Or should we just convert along with what Battlefield wants us to do?
I think they should design it around rush first, and then because I mean, of course, for any game mode, they can change the out of bounds areas to sort of expand the map. But I mean, you could make this amazing rush map that has all these curves, and it's not just one straight linear route. And then, okay, we're gonna open up for conquest. Let's expand the borders a little bit and give access to maybe like some village on the side, or anything like that. And I wish they would do that because Bad Company's 2's maps were just fantastic.
What I would particularly like is that if you get more players in a map, the actual area to play in expands.
Is this the idea that we had a while back off stream where we were talking about having servers be able to increase their player count and have basically a smart border that would increase and decrease depending upon how many players you had?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that ultimately that really helps. And I don't know if it's possible, but like that helps the dynamic of the gameplay, and it allows you to feel more encapsulated, I guess, in the level you're playing in, without saying I'm gonna go run 40 miles down this way, and and not contribute anything to my teammate or anything like that. Like I'm gonna be the sniper that sits out in my spawn spot while my teammates are at C point in Lankang Dam.
Or Hangar 21. That's
Yeah,
Well,
or that level too.
I don't know if the servers and the way that DICE has built them would be able to do like an active version where like literally you just have it can be 64. You just have people join and join and join, and they slowly increase the player count accordingly. But they could make official servers that are designated certain player counts and have each map set to say, we don't have just rush mode anymore. Now we have rush small and rush large, which is you could play rush on 32 or you could play rush on 64 man, which would allow them to have, as Blackout said, their bread and butter, the 64 man crazy battles.
Yeah.
But they could also have tactical mode, basically.
Yeah, and I think that would add to the increase again in competitive gameplay.
Yeah, as speaking as one of the people that didn't really play a lot of Bad Company 2, I do hear a lot about how that game, I guess, really made Rush kind of the forefront, made Rush the center focus of Battlefield, so to speak, and how many people really go back to that and say, oh my god, like Rush and Bad Company 2 was probably the best mode that they ever played in the game, and how Rush on Bad Company 2 was so great. I'm kind of bringing a unique perspective in that I had never ever played. I actually didn't even start playing Battlefield until Battlefield 3 came out. So when I started playing Battlefield 3 Rush, that was my favorite game mode, and to this day it's still my favorite game mode. A Blit is a second, a close second, but I particularly enjoy a good game of Rush. If you've got a lot of people that know how to play and, push and make every effort to make sure that they can try and win the game, Rush can be outstanding. I don't get the same feeling from Battlefield 4 Rush as I did from Battlefield 3. And I played Battlefield 3 on console before I, came over to PC, but even then, it doesn't not have the same feeling at all. Now, whether that's attributed to level design, it could also be the way that players are playing, who's playing and whatnot. There's a lot of different variables. I'd say definitely that most of it probably has to do with level design, though, and how they lay out objectives, how they kind of funnel people into certain parts of a map. Because if you'll watch, they'll sometimes put objectives in a certain place where it's not necessarily the same in a heat map on Conquest. For example, easiest way to kind of figure this is look at, the way Conquest plays on lockers, or the way Conquest plays on Metro, and compare, or actually even perfect example, look at the way Rush plays on Battlefield 3 compared to the way it plays on Battlefield 4. They're practically identical, even though Rush, the map itself on Battlefield 4 has been changed from Battlefield 3. People still play it the exact same way, but you've got all of these different things that they've added to, these different lanes that they've added to Metro 2014 edition on Battlefield 4, but people still play it the same way as they played Battlefield 3. It's just that the way people play Battlefield 3, since I have that recollection of when I originally played it, I already have that feeling. But when I'm playing 4, it's like, okay, there's different lanes and whatnot, and people might necessarily push those, but I get the feeling that it's already been done before, so to speak. And I'm one of those people that will push a lane that nobody else is trying to push, because it'll give your team new angles, and especially if you got a squad that's spawning on you, it works out a little differently.
It also gives you that possibility of having a high reward. Like, you push a lane in, for example, Metro, and they're unsuspecting, or you come up, let's say the back the back escalators of Metro, right? And not a lot of people, in my opinion, they'll push, but they won't do the smart thing, which is turn around after like that area is clear, like right before ticket booth, and shoot the back side of B. And then that'll allow people on front or front escalators or side stairs to get up and take that objective.
Well, another thing, and maybe this goes on topic with what I was saying earlier about there being too much open space, but I feel like there are certain maps in BF4 that have unused space. Like for instance, Firestorm. I mean, given it's pretty much a port from BF3, that there's an entire. Well, I mean, if you're on the Russian side, there is an entire that whole right side of the map is just a giant open dirt pile, and it's not used. I mean, it'd be pretty nice if they because I mean the map is pretty much a straight line. I mean, there's two objectives. There's E and the office building off to the left. But if they put I don't know, two objectives over in that giant open dirt area and put a bunch of buildings, it would change I think the map up a lot. And that's the reason I don't like Firestorm, is because you got that space and players can go in it. You might as well use it.
Okay, I agree with you, but let's tackle our final subject here, which is basically developers. What do you guys think from playing Battlefield Hardline Beta? What have the developers learned from the Battlefield 4 series and possibly applied it to Hardline?
I'm going to go with Dust Bowl is going to be my first topic. Dust Bowl, big, giant, somewhat open map, but it has just enough cover to bounce from cover to cover. So you got your infantry being covered, but at the same time, it's got those long roads so that you can have your vehicles rushing through. It does have some elevation, but not too much. The only one that's kind of crazy is the water tower where the snipers go, but that's not hard to deal with. Other than that, there's one flag they like to do. It's the northmost point. Other than that, they haven't gone too crazy with the verticality. They didn't leave too much open space. They didn't make it so cluttered that vehicles couldn't move.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to say without talking to the developers directly. And again, this is Visceral, not Dice. But in terms of three maps that we got to play in the beta, I like all three. I mean, Dust Bowl, what you said. I mean, there's so much cover that the infantry players can use going back and forth, but there's so much room for the vehicles. It's I love Dust Bowl. I kind of got burned out playing almost only that map, but there really wasn't anything I didn't like about it. I thought the meth lab building was pretty neat, and it was pretty dynamic because you had all those all the entrances and exits for it. And what's that? The city map, is it called Downtown?
It's called Downtown, yeah.
That's a great map too. It's very dynamic. There's roads for the vehicles to do their thing. There's plenty of room for the infantry to do their thing. And then Bank Job's kind of it's pretty much an infantry only map, but even that map too is just very dynamic with how it's laid out. And that's what I think is the most important thing for maps, is make them dynamic, and everything else will kind of fall into place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think Downtown over Dust Bowl for me personally, mainly because I played Hotwire so much. I love the fact that the vehicles can with ease do their own thing without in a way impeding on the infantry's gameplay. It seems like they thought of every aspect, and really methodically thought out about how people are going to move, how vehicles are going to move, how the levolution is going to take place on Downtown. There's plenty of cover so that people that are going into the upper levels of the skyscrapers, really, it's very hard for them to shoot down on people. I don't think I was sniped once from the upper levels of the buildings. If anything, I was shot from the parking garage, but that's okay because I was driving a car and I got RPG'd, so I mean that's valid.
Just as an aside, I really didn't play much of the Hardline beta, but from what I did play, I think I like. I'm assuming Dust Bowl is the one that's kind of in the middle of the desert. That one was my personal favorite, and I didn't really like Conquest too much on it. I almost felt like I've been there, done that. And it's not because of the map design or the level design. It's more because that really felt like, and actually maybe this is their point. It really felt like a Battlefield Conquest type of map. And it just looks a little weird to have cops and robbers, Battlefield Conquest style. Hotwire was absolutely my favorite, game mode there. I'd like to see more of that. And just one last thing, Control C and Control V on all Zavod, and just copy paste that on everything, and pretty much everything works.
Did you guys? I mean, there was only one server I saw this in for Hardline, but it was actually because pretty much all the every Conquest server was Dust Bowl, but there was one server that hosted all three maps, and it was only up for a day. So I
think
don't know if like they got in trouble for doing that or
I
whatnot.
think they might have gotten in trouble for doing that because I think they wanted to set it up specifically. Like Bank Job was Heist,
Yeah.
Downtown and Dust Bowl were Hotwire as well as the Conquest modes.
But I mean, I got to play Conquest on all 3 maps, and I mean, Bank Job was insane. I mean, Bank Job's not that large, but it was big enough to where it felt almost a little crazy like Metro and Locker, but you didn't feel like you were constantly stuck in one spot. So that was fun to play on. And then
Okay.
Downtown was great, and then Dust Bowl was of course awesome.
Yeah, real quick though, to that effect, talking about Bank Job, that I don't think that the vault will ever turn into a cluster because you have tear gas grenades and Molotovs. So there's just no way I see that. Also, you have 3 points of entry. So I just don't see that being even on 64 man. I don't see that being an issue.
Yeah, and there's just so many routes around the entire building, I guess, too, where and the roofs and the parking garage, to where I don't think you're gonna see. Well, it's not even laid out like a tunnel like Metro or Lockers is. So, but it is kind of chaotic because there's 64 players on a not so huge map.
Yeah, but it's fun.
All right. So if we're gonna talk about heist and the wonders of it, I'm gonna want to talk about, or sorry, Bank Job, not heist. But I want to talk about it on heist. The Bravo drop-off point is directly in front of the police spawn. It is quite difficult if you have not made a distraction to manage. There's just not a lot of cover.
Yeah.
You get shot at from the garage. There's the spot where the snipers like to chill on the car garage. And then on top of that, on top of the bank itself, there's plenty of rooftop that you can look directly at it. If the criminals own the roof, then it helps, but still it's this mad dash. And it seems like you have to throw your entire team at it just so that there's a guy alive when the bag is ready to be picked up. Otherwise, you're going to fail, and the cops are going to go ahead and surround it because they're all spawning right there, and there's just not a real easy way. I think that maybe they should pull it closer to the bank so that it's not so cop-sided on that one. But I will agree that it is slightly balanced because you just wait till it stops working there, and then you go over to Alpha or Charlie and take it off from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
I was gonna say also you can run multiple drop points at the same time.
I mean that whole thing's pretty much like a topic for another discussion.
Yeah, but I'm gonna wrap things up here. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me talking about map and level design. I hope everybody has enjoyed their stay. Listen to the first Check Your Minimap podcast, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
See ya, guys.
But